Is burning an American flag protected speech under the First Amendment? How do we feel about Chiefs player Travis Kelce and his girlfriend getting engaged? And is the Trump effect coming for Cracker Barrel? All of that and more on the Kylee Cast. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Kylee Cast. I am Kylee Griswold, Managing Editor at The Federalist. Please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're just listening to the show, be sure to go check out the full video version on my personal YouTube channel or the Federalist channel on Rumble. And if you'd like to email the show, please do so at radio@thefederalist.com. We always love to hear from you. Trump signed an executive order about flag burning this week, and while Democrats and libertarians are not too happy about it, let me tell you why it's actually pretty great. For some people, all they really know about this EO is what they heard from Trump in this one clip from the signing. Check it out.
What the penalty is going to be, if you burn a flag, you get 1 year in jail, no early exits, no nothing. You get 1 year in jail. If you burn a flag, you get, and what it does is incite to riot. I hope they use that language, by the way. Did they?
Yeah, incitement.
Incite to riot. And you burn a flag, you get 1 year in jail. You don't get 10 years, you don't get 1 month. You get 1 year in jail, and it goes on your record. And you will see flag burning stopping immediately, just like when I signed the Statute and Monument Act.
This makes it sound like anyone who destroys an American flag anywhere will be thrown in jail. And thus the shrieking from Democrats and libertarians and the corporate media about this being an affront to the freedom of speech and the First Amendment. And what they keep pointing to is a 5-4 Supreme Court decision from 1989, not the Taylor Swift album, we'll get to her in a little bit, but a Supreme Court case called Texas v. Johnson, of which conservative Justice Antonin Scalia was part of the majority. And this decision held that burning an American flag is protected speech under the First Amendment. But this executive order does not undermine Texas v. Johnson. It does not go against it. It actually doesn't create any new laws, nor does it make flag burning itself illegal. Here's what the executive order explicitly says, quote, "Our great American flag is the most sacred and cherished symbol of the United States of America and of American freedom, identity, and strength. Over nearly 2.5 centuries, many thousands of American patriots have fought, bled, and died to keep the stars and stripes waving proudly. The American flag is a special symbol in our national life that should unite and represent all Americans of every background and walk of life. Desecrating it is uniquely offensive and provocative. It is a statement of contempt, hostility, and violence against our nation, the clearest possible expression of opposition to the political union that preserves our rights, liberty, and security. Burning this representation of America may incite violence and riot. American flag burning is also used by groups of foreign nationals as a calculated act to intimidate and threaten violence against Americans because of their nationality and place of birth. Notwithstanding the Supreme Court's rulings on First Amendment protections, the court has never held that American flag desecration conducted in a manner that is likely to incite imminent lawless action, or that is an action amounting to, quote, fighting words, is constitutionally protected. See Texas v. Johnson, that 1989 case. My administration will act to restore respect and sanctity to the American flag and prosecute those who incite violence or otherwise violate our laws while desecrating this symbol of our country to the fullest extent permissible under any available authority, end quote. So that's what Trump's executive order says. Note that the Trump administration specifically references Texas v. Johnson, but also that it talks about the manner in which a flag is burned, and specifically if it is, quote, likely to incite imminent lawless action, which is not constitutionally protected speech. And that's something the Supreme Court reinforced 20 years before Texas v. Johnson in a case known as Brandenburg v. Ohio. So in other words, if you burn a flag in your backyard, the feds are not likely to come knocking down your door. But if you burn a flag at a federal courthouse right before an Antifa mob starts shooting at ICE officers, that's a different story. That would be inciting imminent lawless action. Thus, the new executive order is not a violation of the First Amendment, nor is it a violation of Supreme Court precedent in Texas v. Johnson, even though I would argue that was bad precedent, but we will come back to that in a minute. But notice how the language of the executive order closely mirrors the language of the incredible dissent in Texas v. Johnson. Here is Chief Justice John Rehnquist dissenting from the majority, quote, "The American flag, then, throughout more than 200 years of our history, has come to be the visible symbol embodying our nation. It does not represent the views of any particular political party, and it does not represent any particular political philosophy. The flag is not simply another idea or point of view competing for recognition in the marketplace of ideas. Millions and millions of Americans regard it with an almost mystical reverence, regardless of what sort of social, political, or philosophical beliefs they may have. I cannot agree that the First Amendment invalidates the act of Congress and the laws of 48 of the 50 states, which make criminal the public burning of the flag." He also writes, "The court decides that the American flag is just another symbol," he's talking about the majority here, "about which not only must opinions pro and con be tolerated, but for which the most minimal public respect may not be enjoined. The government may conscript men into the armed forces where they must fight and perhaps die for the flag, but the government may not prohibit the public burning of the banner under which they fight." End quote. It's an excellent dissent. I encourage you to go and read the whole thing, because those justices that dissented were right, and now Trump is right. And again, he's mirroring a lot of their words and ideas. Now, you can twist yourself in knots trying to make all kinds of constitutional defenses for flag burning, but they all fall flat for a few reasons. And that's in part why I find Texas v. Johnson to be an erroneous decision. First of all, there's a reason you won't find prohibitions on flag burning in the Constitution, and that's because the founders knew that if someone burned a flag in public, a mob would string them up. We have a whole host of problems the Constitution was not designed to address. It can't reasonably be made to address them without perverse or arbitrary results. Second of all, you will not convince me that actions that were universally seen as criminal magically became constitutional and sacred because 5 oligarchs in robes said so, even if one of them was conservative. Flag burning was a crime in 48 states and under federal law, and had been for decades, if not much longer. But then as soon as some hippie in 1984 decided that he was going to burn a flag at the RNC, I'm supposed to believe that now flag burning is an eternal right? No way. Third of all, I would argue that flag burning is arson, and arson isn't speech, it's a crime. You can try to construe anything as expression, but we all inherently know there are serious limits to expressing yourself, especially when the underlying activity is itself a crime, like arson. Can you defecate on the public square as a protest and then claim it's speech? Of course not. Can you go around spitting on soldiers' graves in national cemeteries to protest war? Nope. Also a crime. So why can you set fire to the emblem of our country? I would argue you can't, or at least you shouldn't be able to. Fourth, it's really hard to convince people who actually love our country that burning an American flag is somehow protected speech, but burning a pride flag or doing a burnout on a rainbow crosswalk is a hate crime. And it's funny because the same legacy media that are all up in arms about free speech and the First Amendment with Trump's order said nothing about free speech when they covered hate crime charges for people who desecrated pride flags. The same standard does not apply. Chris Rufo perfectly summed up my thoughts on the matter with this tweet. Quote, "I'm sorry, but as long as this is the status quo, I'm not going to work myself into a state of hysteria about Trump's executive order on burning the American flag." End quote. The Federalists CEO Sean Davis also said it well. Quote, "If it's illegal to burn pride flags or do burnouts on rainbow crosswalks, then it should be illegal to burn the American flag. And if it's illegal to burn $1 in protest of fiat money, there should be no issue with making it illegal to burn the American flag. Either arson is speech or arson is a crime. No more of this, it's okay when we burn your symbols, but a crime when you burn our symbols nonsense." End quote. And that's exactly right, especially when our symbols aren't red or blue. They're red, white, and blue. They represent all of America. Texas v. Johnson was wrong. Donald Trump was right, and people who burn American flags, especially when it incites violence, which we've seen repeatedly in this country, should absolutely be prosecuted for it. Okay, if everybody's talking about something, we have to talk about it on the Kylee Cast. And this week, everybody is talking about the fact that Taylor Swift is finally getting her love story. Are we finally done with all of the breakup songs? We will see. Hopefully we are fully done. Here to talk about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce's romance, whether they like it or not, is Federalistas Jordan Boyd and Elle Purnell. Jordan is our staff writer and Elle Purnell is our assignment editor. Welcome to you both.
Good to be back, Kylee.
Thanks so much for joining me to talk about this either incredible news or horrible news, depending on whether you are a Taylor Swift fan or whether you just want to stop seeing Taylor Swift's face all over NFL games this season. So both of you, I would love to hear your just initial reactions to hearing the news about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. Elle, let's start with you. Just gut reaction right off the bat. Go.
I think the first reaction I had was that her ring was ugly. But I'm happy for her. I don't know. That's my hottest take about Taylor Swift. But it's always great to see people get engaged and hopefully get married sooner rather than later.
How about you, Jordan?
I would say, in theory, excited for someone to get married and finally get there at the age and stage after a series of failed relationships that were very public. But also just a little bit hesitant about the path forward, which I'm sure we'll dig into.
Let's start with the ring. I have a picture here of the ring. Elle, since you brought it up, I completely agree. I think this ring is hideous. I guess it's pretty Taylor. It's very vintage and unique and huge. She's got plenty of money to play with, and so does Travis. I've heard ballpark estimates of what the ring is worth, but I think those are it's hard to tell because who knows how many carats that is. I mean, it looks like it could be kind of a shallow stone. Who knows? Point being, it's very gaudy. It's very large. It looks like costume jewelry. I have heard a lot of negativity about the ring, but maybe that's just because of the Federalist staff chat and my algorithm. I don't know of too many people who actually really like the ring, but maybe they're out there. I don't know. What do you think about the ring, Jordan?
My initial reaction, not surprised at the size, right? Like Taylor Swift is the biggest pop culture icon right now and has been for a while. So you expect her to be wearing a big ring. It's sort of, I don't know, it lacks character in a really odd way, in my opinion. And it might have been Elle that said this, but it looks like a Super Bowl ring, which is a little bit odd considering Travis Kelce was the one who supposedly designed it in collaboration with jewelers. So I don't know. I don't know the implications of that. I don't know if we should overthink that or underthink that, but it is a little odd. It lacks character. And for someone who has made such a presence in pop culture, you would just expect something different, I think.
Yeah. Elle, what do you think of it? You think it's ugly, but what else?
Yeah. So, it definitely looks like it was picked out by someone with Super Bowl rings. But I saw a lot of people describing it as antique and vintage, which is in line with a lot of Taylor Swift's taste. But I think the size doesn't work with the vintage look. When you get an antique ring, it's not going to be 7 carats. And so the gold band is very dainty. It's very intricate. And then you have this huge rock on it. I think that's where the mismatch is. I think it's really hard to marry the big chunky stone with the more delicate antique band. I think if you're going to do a big stone, you need it to be very minimalist. Or if you're going to do the antique band, then have several diamonds on it instead of one big one. I don't know. But I think that's the root of my aesthetic complaint about it. But yeah, it's pretty diamond. It's a pretty band, but they just don't go together.
Yeah, I agree. In what universe is this vintage or antique unless you're talking Marie Antoinette vintage or something? It's not a good association. Yeah, it's not believably vintage in the way that we think of things being more quirky or unique. You can't go big like that and also be that vintage aesthetic. I agree with that. Yeah.
And there can be something really cool and fun about mixing two unexpected things, but it just, I don't know, it didn't work here.
Yeah, I agree. You definitely see, I think Travis Kelce's design skills or lack thereof come through in this gaudy Super Bowl-esque ring. I saw on Twitter somebody photoshopped a Super Bowl ring on her finger, and it looked pretty similar, to be honest. So, yeah.
I want to know, how is she going to fit a wedding band with this?
Okay, yes, that was my question. And also functionality. Like anytime anyone wears the most massive diamond in the world, I mean, she's not raising children or cooking, but she did just talk last week on a podcast about making sourdough. And like, how do you even do anything with that thing on your finger? You know, like you either have to constantly take it off or you risk beheading it on everything.
Right. That's a great segue to that podcast, Jordan. I got through the first hour and I stopped listening. I mean, I could have had it in the background while I was doing something else. It wasn't like I had to turn it off because I just couldn't listen to it anymore. I like Jason Kelce. I find him enjoyable to listen to. Travis is whatever. I mean, I could take him or leave him. I don't really care. But from my understanding, this was Taylor Swift's first podcast interview she's ever done. Or maybe I'm wrong about that, but it seemed to be. She's been on documentaries and stuff, but never like on a 2-hour feature-length podcast. And it was so shocking to me. So anybody who's ever listened to Federalist Radio Hour back in the archives or whatever, I'm on record as a Taylor Swift fan. I've liked her music. I grew up with her music. I was that girl who had all of the CDs and the CDs that were like the karaoke CD. So you had the CD that was just instrumentals with not Taylor's voice and the graphics. So you could put it in your karaoke machine and plug it in and then you could be Taylor Swift. And I mean, I grew up on her music, had all of it. Loved it until her recent stuff, which even like mid to near range I was into. Her most recent album, I literally could not get through it. I started listening to it and I had to shut it off because it was just annoying me. It was just droning on. There was no variety. It was not interesting. It was just boring and I didn't like it. So anyway, but I was never one of those people who would, anytime Taylor Swift was on an interview or performing, live on something, like I had to watch it. It just, Taylor Swift, the music, yes. Taylor Swift, the person, didn't really keep up with her at all. And then to listen to her on this podcast, I was like, oh my goodness, I feel like I'm listening to a 17-year-old on a podcast. It was like the things she was saying felt so not inappropriate, but like inappropriate in the moment. Like she goes on this whole thing about this otter and how Travis Kelce wants an otter. And she's like coming up with this little backstory for this otter. And I was like, I am secondhand embarrassed for you going on and on about this. It's like you are 17. It was very, very odd. And so I'm curious how she's going to be as a wife. And I'm wondering if Travis is just infatuated by her or like has to be with her because she's Taylor Swift. So how do you break up with Taylor Swift? I mean, she's the most famous woman in the world. Or if this is actually a marriage that is going to work. I'm curious, Jordan, you asked, or you said, you're maybe skeptical about it. What do you think about it?
Yeah, well, when I heard the news that they got engaged, I went and pulled up the Instagram post. And I know Taylor kind of has this secret language that she speaks with her fans and refers back to old songs and kind of weaves this web. But the caption was about 2 high school teachers getting married. And it just struck me odd that 2 people who I think are 35 were still so stuck in this high school mindset. And I think, I don't want to make judgments. I don't know these people. But one of the biggest motivating factors for people getting into a serious relationship and getting married is maturity. And you can see how people who on paper were older and got married but were immature and how that didn't work out. And then you see people who get married super young at 19 and were there maturity wise and made it work and made it happen. And so you just wonder, like, a little bit of this millennialism stuck in the past thing has really seeped into both Travis and Taylor's lives. And they really haven't had a chance to like live in the real world. They've both just sort of been in their bubbles. Like Travis has been a football star his entire life. A lot of guys have a reckoning when they leave high school and like don't play sports anymore. He hasn't had that reckoning. His retirement is probably closing in, but he hasn't had that reckoning. And Taylor probably will never get that reckoning in that way that a lot of people get. And so, yeah, I am hesitant about what their relationship will look like moving forward, what their plan is for children, that sort of thing.
Interesting. What do you think about that, Elle?
So I did actually think the caption was cute, which maybe that says more about my caption skills than anything else. But so what Jordan was saying made me think about kind of a discourse we've seen happening on Twitter, where you have a lot of people who are like, oh, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce are getting married. They're going to cause this like crazy, baby boom, and all of a sudden getting married and having babies is going to be cool again. And like, that'd be great if that happened. But I mean, but then on the flip side, I was reading an interesting, like the opposite perspective. I think it was in Compact. I forget the name of the author, but he was basically like, look, it's great that they're getting married, but this isn't as countercultural as it's being made out to be because they're in their mid-30s. Like, it's what both of them have done, and some people do meet their spouse after, later in life or after they've met career success. But both Taylor and Travis have had years of career and material success, and they're kind of at the pinnacle of each of their careers. And now they're getting married. Now they found that person to share their life with. Now that they already have their life kind of all built together. And, everyone's love story is different. So that's not a bad thing in and of itself. That's how it worked out for them. But on a societal level, that's not a good way to look at marriage. You don't want to look at marriage as this thing that happens only when you have checked all of the other boxes in your life, and then it's just kind of just the crowning jewel on top. Marriage is something that at its best, you get married and you build your life together. And so maybe that means finding your spouse and getting married before you hit the pinnacle of your career. A lot of guys don't hit their, career peak until their 50s. Do you want to wait until then to get married? Like, no, it's not how it's designed to work. So that's not to say they shouldn't get married, like better now than never. But it's not a recipe that's going to work for most people who aren't superstars.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, a really good point. I think there's probably some middle ground between those two takes, right? Between this is the best thing that's ever happen and it's going to make marriage and babies cool again, and this is not actually good news, or maybe that's probably not quite how they teed it up, but that it's actually bad because they've waited so long to get married. And I don't know, I do think there's something to be said for the fact that it was less than a year ago that Taylor Swift posted on Instagram. It was about the 2024 election, and she signed off her Instagram post as a childless cat lady, which obviously was a dig at JD Vance. It was a troll. But still, that was how she identified herself, was as a childless cat lady. And she's still a cat lady and she's still childless. But it's like this woman who has had many, many boyfriends over the years that she's been very public about, or at least incorporated into all of her breakup songs. But she's dated a lot of non-marriage material men, a lot of effeminate men, a lot of men who are just like, very artisty and cerebral and whatever. And I don't think it's a coincidence that, it took her a long time, but that she finally meets a guy's guy, a man's man, a jock who has a normal, like his brother has a very normal family by all accounts, a true American man. And in just 2 years of dating, which, for some people that's a long time, but not by cultural standards for sure. After 2 years of dating, she's ready to settle down with this jock of a guy right after she signed off as a childless cat lady. It seems like at least the right trajectory, even if it is somewhat a case of arrested development and later than what is probably desirable, both for her age and for her career, to be settling down. What do you think?
Me or Jordan?
It's interesting.
Either, whoever has thoughts.
Interesting. I think it's interesting when someone, for whatever reason, like family and children and marriage has become really politicized, and it's sort of been assigned as like a value of the right, which is what that discourse that JD Vance and Taylor Swift got into last year about was, the family first policies that we're seeing make their way forward under the Trump administration aren't necessarily touted by Democrats. And so it's always interesting to see someone who's been vocally on the left for a while now, Taylor Swift, choose to partake of something that she's previously shunned. And I think it just goes to show that, like, these values matter not because they're political, but because they're the ones that like sustain us. They sustain our society, they sustain our culture, and everyone has a stake in them. And a lot of people partake in them, even though they don't put in the legwork to preserve them. So I think there's a really interesting contrast here, and potentially an opportunity for Taylor Swift to learn something about something that she may have previously shunned under the guise of it being political. It's not political to want traditional marriage to trump everything else, and for families to expand, and for us to bump our replacement rate back up over 2.1. You know, we're at a devastatingly low fertility rate right now in the United States and the Western world. And so we need to be thinking, it's past time to be thinking about the kind of cultural norms and institutions that we need to boost that, because frankly, policies aren't doing it anymore. And so I hope this is a moment for her and other people who maybe haven't had their eyes opened to the possibility that the institution of marriage and family, it's important. It's something that we all need to work towards preserving and protecting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I wrote about this, I think last year when she made the childless cat lady comments, but Taylor Swift herself did not want to be a childless cat lady. Like, I think that is probably the posture of a lot of women who are single, but like they give the game away because they don't actually want to be childless cat ladies. Like Taylor Swift, for her entire career, has been writing songs about marriage and family for her entire career. And it's like, nobody believes, Taylor, that you don't actually want to get married and that you don't actually want to have babies. And maybe you're lying to yourself. Maybe you're unwilling to admit it publicly because you're unwilling to admit it to yourself because you want to, you know, go on another tour or whatever. But it's like, you've been writing and singing about this for years because it's the natural yearning of the human heart to desire these things. And like you said, Jordan, it's what sustains our entire society. So it's very, very important. I saw a new study out from the Institute for Family Studies about women's happiness and marriage. And let me read you here. This is from the study. Okay, Institute for Family Studies. Only 32% of women believe that women who marry and have children live fuller, happier lives. So only 1 in 3 women thinks that it's better, that you'll be happier if you have kids and get married. At the same time, 55% of single women, so more than half, believe that single women are generally happier than married women. So women who have never tried these things think that they're happier than the women who get married. In a 2024 Pew Research survey, less than half of single women said they eventually wanted to have children, which also lends itself to those low fertility or replacement rates. Here's another thing from that IFS study. So married women are more likely to report that life is enjoyable. Those who are married with children, 47%, so about half of them report that life is enjoyable, versus unmarried without children. So this is the bucket that Taylor Swift falls into. Only 34% are likely to report that life is enjoyable. Same here for reporting being very happy. As for married with children, that number is 19%. It drops all the way to 10% unmarried without children. These are pretty shocking numbers. Like, this is definitely a mark in the column for marriage and family. And Taylor Swift, love her or hate her, is well on her way toward that. This engagement brings to mind a comparison and a contrast with another celebrity that you wrote about this week, Jordan, Millie Bobby Brown, who is much younger than Taylor Swift. Why don't you tell us about the choices that she's been making and how they differ and how they're the same as Taylor Swift?
Yeah, well, I know Elle's written about this too, but Millie Bobby Brown became engaged and married at 19 and 20 to her now husband, Jake Bon Jovi. And so, you know, that decision was very countercultural for the world that she's grown up in. Both her and her husband grew up in front of the TV camera, in front of paparazzi, both actors, models, etc. And they made the decision to kind of reject this Hollywood narrative of, oh, you need, you know, decades long of failed relationships that are in public. And, you know, you need to have a strung out engagement. You need to wait to start a family until you're older. But you can do it before you get married. There's just all these countercultural things.
Mm-hmm.
And what her and her husband did was get engaged, get married within a year of getting engaged, and then adopt a baby the next year. And so that's the announcement that they made recently, is they adopted a baby girl and are now a thriving family of 3. So to see such a display of what is normal to people like me and you, like we all either fit into that category of getting married young and having children young, or around people who fit into that category. But that's not the normal in Hollywood. That's not normal in the world that at least Taylor is in. And so to see someone lean into that happiness and see that life is a lot bigger than your career. Life is a lot bigger than your next acting gig. Life is a lot bigger than your next album. And seriously, just reject everything that Hollywood says about that. And, when it comes to childbearing, a lot of people will either have children together before they get married, or they get old enough and have rejected enough relationships where they're actually out of their prime fertility and have a very hard time conceiving. And the popular choice right now is to turn to assisted reproductive technology. It's easy for someone in a position with a lot of money to buy into that, and even potentially it makes it more alluring if you're in an industry where your physical body is on display, like modeling or acting or singing, and you don't want to make that sacrifice for pregnancy. And so we've seen various versions of that come out with other celebrities where they buy into this ART and they use IVF, or they want to become a single parent because they've just given up on love. So they buy eggs and sperm and create a child and rent a womb and then raise that child in their 50s. And so it's just a very backwards way of doing things. That's been very normalized and celebrated in the media and Hollywood, but with Millie Bobby Brown, we haven't seen that. So I think there's this moment where I'm holding my breath for Travis and Taylor to see, okay, are they really following that natural progression that normal people follow, which is get married and then have children? For both of them, their biological clocks are ticking. It's just a reality. And are they going to lean into that, or are they going to wait and sort of use these outsourced reproductive technologies to make their dreams of becoming parents true? I don't know. We'll have to see. But it is interesting to see that contrast between someone like Millie Bobby Brown, who at such a young age has already realized what's important in life, and someone like Travis and Taylor, who are maybe playing catch up a little bit right now. So we'll see what happens in the next few years. But I'm hopeful, but also you kind of have to expect the worst, because we just have seen so much outlandish behavior from celebrities before.
Right. Elle, what do you think it's going to take to get America back to the Millie Bobby Brown philosophy of marriage and child rearing? I mean, I think it's feminism that sold women such an ugly lie, which is why you see studies like this IFS study that report, more than half of childless, unmarried single women think that they're way happier now than they ever could be getting married and having children. They seriously think their lives are fuller and better. And I mean, what does it take? Is this just a spiritual problem? Is it a cultural problem? When will people realize that IVF is problematic? What's it going to take to get us to normal, healthy fertility rates and marriage rates in this country?
Yeah, it's a spiritual problem and it's a cultural problem. And it's lots of other kinds of problems too. I think like getting married and having babies is kind of a contagious thing. Like when your friends are doing it, and then your friends are having babies and you get to hold their babies in church and you're like, oh, this is so cute. Like I want one of my own. And then like with marriage, you see your friends get married and you want that for yourself, or you like even just getting to know, your friends' husbands and being like, oh, this is a nice guy who's, he's not an evil, horrible, like so many women, I think, whether they've had bad experiences with men or they just have this like preconceived notion from culture, have this idea that men in marriage are oppressive and, have a net negative effect. Obviously, we all know that's not true. And so like it's just spending time with people in your life who are happily married, who are happily, have children. I think that's probably the best solution. So this is like tangent. I want to go back a little bit because as you guys were talking about Taylor and Travis and like making the comparison to Millie Bobby Brown and Jake Bon Jovi, I was trying to think of other celebrity couples to draw comparisons to. And I feel like there's a little bit of danger of this becoming like a Meghan Markle and Prince Harry situation. I hope not. But like Travis Kelce definitely gives me a similar impression as Prince Harry. Like Prince Harry was the very like jock kind of brother. He was in the military and he was the heartthrob. And then you had Meghan Markle, who was not nearly as successful as Taylor Swift, but probably thinks that she is.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Undoubtedly.
And that relationship, she's obviously taken the reins in that relationship. It's been kind of sad to see. So I'm curious, like, listen, to be married to Taylor Swift, you have to recognize that she has a very successful career, and obviously like that's something you should support as her husband. But I'm just curious to see how that goes and how they do that kind of delicate dance of supporting each other. I would probably the most comparable person as far as just the situation that I can think of was Grace Kelly in the 50s. She's like America's sweetheart in this similar way that Taylor Swift is. And then she gets swept off her feet by a prince, totally leaves Hollywood and just like settles down to be a princess and a wife and mother. I don't really see that happening with Taylor Swift either. So I'm very curious to see like how this goes. Obviously, both Taylor and Travis are very successful. If they do have children, who's going to take care of the kids? Are they ever going to see their kids? Is there going to be a nanny? Is one of them going to scale back their career? Like, I'm just very curious to see what that looks like and hopeful that they make decisions that are good for their marriage and their, hopefully, family.
I wonder if in this scenario, Travis will be the Grace Kelly, because I think Taylor's career will likely far outlive Travis's, which is an interesting dynamic. You know, obviously, in my mind, she's one more bad album away from being dead to me. But for a lot of America, I mean, they love her. And like new generations of girls are growing up. You know, she's no longer just the millennial entertainer. Gen Z has now grown up, and they've grown up on different albums than I did. But it's like, they also love her for different reasons. Whereas Travis, you know, you've only got so many years in the NFL before you are, you know, tearing all your knee ligaments and just calling it a day. So I'm curious about, you know, is he just going to become a brand ambassador? And I don't think he's the next Tom Brady. I don't think he's going to be as successful and stick around that long. Like, he's going to be riding her coattails and probably settling down to be Mr. Mom if I had to make a guess. But we'll see. We'll see. Let's switch gears really quick. As long as I've got you and we're talking about culture, let's talk about the other big cultural firestorm happening this week and last week and perhaps the week before about Cracker Barrel, which has tied itself in all kinds of knots and has been forced to walk back its logo change, which, thank God, because look at this new logo compared to the old logo. The old logo, everybody knows it. Everybody loves it. Uncle Herschel. I cannot talk today. I'm so sorry. The cracker and the barrel, lovely. They got rid of both the cracker and the barrel and put it on this AI generated looking, completely sterile, personality-less, soulless Cracker Barrel logo. Apparently, they are now walking back and going back to the old logo, but they are sticking with their hideous interior design. The one on the left is the old feel-good country vibe. Everybody loved it. Felt like being at grandma's house. And the new one is Joanna Gaines' shiplap from hell. No personality, just sterile and awful. It sounds like they're sticking with that design. I want the Federalistas' hot takes on the whole situation and predictions for what you think the next step is. Jordan, let's start with you.
I mean, if they want to be successful, like Trump said, host a press conference and good riddance to that CEO. I mean, she was warned more than a year ago now by investors that a rebrand was obvious folly, I believe were the words that the investor used, and she plowed forward. I don't know in what world. She already wears glasses, so I can't suggest glasses, but in what world is that new logo or is the new design appealing? I mean, the Americana, old-timey, feel-good, warm country cooking vibes of Cracker Barrel are what make Cracker Barrel Cracker Barrel. And to do away with all of that for really no good reason whatsoever, the good reason would have been, oh, your stock is plummeting. No, they did that to themselves after the rebrand. It's just a little bit bizarre. And so, yeah, steps forward, get rid of the people who made this happen because it's terrible. And unfortunately, I think they've already done some damage to their customer base. They can't really come all the way back from what they've done, especially because the only thing they've really promised to budge on is the logo. They haven't said anything about the interior. So we could still be subjected to shiplap from hell, in your words, and walls of neatly organized rolling pins. It's so robotic. So yeah, I want to believe the best, but until there's some change up in the top down leadership, I don't think we'll be trending in a good direction.
Jordan, you mentioned the rolling pins. My favorite, and like by favorite I mean the worst, but it was so funny to me. The in one of the pictures of the new design, they had like 20 flour sifters arranged in like 4x5 or whatever on like a plaque. It was so funny. Like, I don't even know where you get that many flour sifters, but that was my favorite part. Yeah, so do you guys remember it was a couple months ago, I think, when the Duolingo announced that the Duolingo owl had died, and everyone was like, what on earth? What's going on? And then, it was just this brilliant publicity stunt, and everyone was talking about the Duolingo owl, and then I think he came back somehow. So I was thinking about that when I was watching this Instagram reel where a guy was saying what Cracker Barrel needs to do is have this whole campaign where they bring Uncle Herschel back, but brand it, make those wanted posters and put Uncle Herschel on them, and make this whole publicity stunt out of him disappearing and then trying to get him back, and then he comes back and then everybody's happy. That would be brilliant, I think. And it would, it would be a way to kind of poke fun at their own mistake. I don't think they're smart enough to do that, but I think they should.
No, but it's a great idea. Can we also just talk about the Trump effect here? I mean, the man just needs to do one Truth Social post and it just shames these people. The stock plummeting wasn't enough. All the outcry on social media and in the real world, people not eating at Cracker Barrel, that wasn't enough. But Trump gets on and says one thing on social media and all of a sudden the old logo comes back. I mean, that is just a beautiful thing. Chef's kiss, especially because the CEO clearly she would hate Donald Trump. So that's just funny. I thought Sean Davis's point in the Federalist this week was so good. He was talking about how Cracker Barrel declined markedly post-COVID in the way that almost every other restaurant declined, where food quality suffers, service suffers. I mean, I think everybody has noticed this. Any takeout experience, any dine-out experience, any coffee shop experience, I mean, you name it, has just been markedly worse post-COVID. And everybody wants even higher tips now for doing no work, but service and quality across the board plummeted. And Cracker Barrel was no exception to that. And his point was that the solution to that is to fix your service problems. It is not to rebrand in this soulless way that just demonstrates disdain for your customer base. And I think that the redo of the peg game was really the icing on the cake that just showed Jordan hates it. Look at that face.
Hate it.
It basically used to make fun of you for being stupid if you weren't good at this game. And now it's all nice try. It's the participation trophy of games. And also, I'm pretty sure they spelled a word incorrectly. I saw this on Fox News, that they spelled embarrassed incorrectly. And if that ain't just so poetic, I mean, yeah. Jordan, I get the sense that you've spent a not insignificant amount of time playing that peg game at Cracker Barrel.
That is true. And I'm not ignoramus, as it says. I usually do okay with it. But yeah, I mean, I think you have to address the root cause. And, if we've seen one thing from the Trump administration, is that they want to go after the root cause. I mean, Trump is a businessman at heart, and he's not interested in treating symptoms. He wants root cause. And we've seen that in Maha. We've seen that in, gutting FBI, DOJ corruption. And we need people on board with that everywhere. If Cracker Barrel had just gone after that root cause, they would be far better off than they are now. And instead, they tried to treat the symptom and do it poorly, and now they're worse off. So yeah, I think, I don't know, Trump is a businessman for a reason, and they tried to throw him in prison a few times over different business tactics, but the truth is his methods work, and yeah, they should have listened a lot earlier. He should have never had to step in, but I'm glad they're listening now, and hopefully they continue to listen.
Yeah, I really like Elle's branding idea. I love it. I think they should take her advice next. Maybe if we can get in Trump's ear with that idea, we'll be seeing Uncle Herschel wanted posters everywhere. And all it's going to take is a true social post from him and we'll get it. So I think we need to make Cracker Barrel great again. And yeah, let's see what happens. Elle and Jordan, thank you so much for joining me today. Appreciated having you as always. And I hope to have you both back again very soon.
Thanks, Kylie.
Good.
Last week, Pete Hegseth and RFK Jr. teamed up to release the Bobby and Pete Challenge. It was part of the Make America Healthy Again movement and Fit Not Fat, where they encouraged young, healthy Americans to their challenge, which was to do 100 push-ups and 50 pull-ups in any order in 10 minutes or less. Both of these men in Trump's cabinet successfully did the challenge, and they were just extending it to the rest of America. Here's part of the video. It's pretty great.
All right, here we are in the bowels of the Pentagon for the Pete and Bobby Challenge. I think this was your idea, so I blame you. But it's all about Make America Healthy Again. We're going to be fit, not fat. We want recruits that are ready to go and challenge What are we doing today, Bobby?
Well, Pete and I are going to do our part, encourage American youth to do this challenge. And the challenge is to do 100 push-ups and 50 pull-ups in any order you want in under 10 minutes.
So 5 minutes is the top standard that we want to meet.
Not going to be able to do.
Well, of course, in response, the New York Times dug up some experts to warn why this challenge could be dangerous. It was so funny, too, because they enlisted experts to basically say that RFK Jr. and Pete Hegseth were doing their pull-ups wrong. Anyway, they ended up changing the headline to 100 push-ups and 50 pull-ups in under 10 minutes. What could go wrong? But the point is, they had to come out and say that this regimen or this challenge that RFK Jr. and Pete Hegseth issued was dangerous. And then this week, we were reminded why the Democrat New York Times had to say that. And that's because this is their guy.
You move up in the poll! Yeah! This is how you move up in the polls! Yeah! Yeah! Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go! Yeah! Let me get one more, let me get three! Let me get three! Let me get three! Yeah!
In case it isn't clear, this is Zohran Mamdani, who is running for mayor of New York City. He is the avowed communist socialist, just an all-around disaster, not only for the country, but specifically for New York City. But he can't even do a bench press. This is the worst thing I've ever seen. He can't lift the bar. He can't even do a single rep unassisted. This isn't just somebody spotting him. This is somebody straight up moving the bar up and down for him. And look at his form. It's the worst thing I've ever seen. Look at his hand placement. Totally wrong. Notice that his foot flails out. When you do a bench press, your feet should be firmly planted. You should be pushing through your heels. And this is just truly one of the worst things I've ever seen. So it's really a beautiful moment of choose your fighter. Do you want Pete Hegseth or Zohran Mamdani? Pretty easy answer for the majority of Americans, and specifically for the type of men that Democrats are desperate to figure out why they're hemorrhaging. Why can't they lure anyone with testosterone into their tent of diversity, equity, inclusion, and whatever the heck this is from Mamdani? It's really quite a mystery. But at the end of the day, this just fits in so perfectly with all of Democrats' other shticks. It's all theater. It's all play acting at being normal. It's LARPing as being relatable. Remember when Chuck Schumer posted that ridiculous video of him grilling where it's like just disgusting raw meat that he's putting cheese on the grill? Just like nobody's buying it. Or when Democrats inorganically curse or drink beer, pretending that that's what's really going to lure the men back to their party. Or when David Hogg gets on an interview and talks about getting laid. It's like, yeah, wow, you are so relatable and so masculine. Or Tim Walz runs on stage in his camo, but waves like this. It's like, you ain't fooling anybody. Nobody's buying what you're selling. So to Zohran Mamdani, but also the rest of the Democrat Party, all I have to say is, come on.
Come on.
That's going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's edition of the Kylee Cast. I will be right back here next week with more. Until then, just remember, the truth hurts, but it won't kill ya.